Dude, once you get this thing going in the heat, there's lives to be told from the stench. And you start thinking other people smell. Seriously, you're like, dude, you like been down and you come up, fuck is that? And it's like the best way to say it is it's like an old sponge, like the sponge you keep at your sink, and then you're like, whoa, we gotta replace that one, and you grab a new one because it's just like a older smell. You can get a wash on these things. I promise you guys we're gonna come back with these. It just literally, my capital investment to get these going is not there. And I promise we will, and they'll be MCD1 spec. This is a prototype apron. You guys have asked about this. This is something when we were gonna get a batch of aprons going, this was one of them they sent us. I gave my other one to Luke, which was a black one, because this is like your tan, what's left of that color. But they'll be spec. They're adjusted. This isn't off the shelf. This is exactly how I wanted things. And I still have a couple revisions on this. But they feel good, and they have that strap back here. The worst is like the style where you just have a neck and it pulls on you, and then you just tighten that. And that's why you need the X. And that's why it's also nice to have a strap here, because there's like padding. Don't look at that yet. Obviously, these are like war torn now. So the thing with this, I have wanted to do, I thought that table was so much closer. Whoa! I've wanted to do a Sandcar body for a while. I've done bits and pieces of aluminum work, but nothing is involved where I really get to create an expression with a whole body. I'm never moved, not in a critical way, but the last person that like inspired me with their fabrication was Matt Walrath. And a lot of the inspiration I find from World War II aircraft, a lot of aerospace stuff, organic stuff now. If you ever just do peace hippie shit, if you ever look at patterns on plants and leaves and how things grow, there's a lot of really good design to find in that. Hypercars have really good design, so I don't ever see stuff where I'm like, that is beautiful. And the same with Sandcar bodies. I see either two types, and I don't mean it in a critical way, but I see these huge bulbous shapes that are just big, and I call it shock and awe design, meaning they're big, like blah, and they force you to blah, look at that big thing, and you know, shock and awe. It doesn't last. It's like something that goes off and it blows up and you go, whoa, and then it goes away. And there's nothing that leaves a tale of timelessness or legacy. And then I see angular ones. A lot of just angles. The further I get into my career, I am not building just cookie cutter onto the next one stuff. These are legacy things. I'm 41 years old. I have a certain clientele that this is what we do. They come to me because this is what we do. We put care and consideration into designing every single piece. Piece meaning the vehicle, and we turn them into these functional art pieces. Sandcar body, I wanted to do for a while. This is a special Sandcar body because it's got a story to it. It does have some tragedy in it, but the owner is, the family that owns this thing and gave me the opportunity to construct this thing. It's a meaningful thing. So I've been, over the years, one of the biggest battles. I know this is a bunch of fucking tangents, but just let me get it out and then we'll get to the body. Okay, it's right here. over the years, part of my struggles are removing emotion and feelings from the vehicles and just treating them as they should. Put the best amount of design and work and focus into them, but remove the emotion. When I first started out doing fabrication and working at shops, I would get attached to the vehicle. Or even if I was working on something and then, the boss or the guy in charge told me, oh, you're going and working on this now. And I'd be like, well, it's my baby. And I just, no way, bad move. And I think a lot of that with business, period, is removing emotion from business, removing reactionary shit, thinking about things and operating from just a business mindset. And it's been a struggle. The more I grow, the better I am at that. But, I've definitely done the latter. So with this, I started doing a pre-run here. The edges are definitely a lot harder, meaning they look very, like there's a crispy break in them. But what you have to understand here is look at that pinky, dude, what a monstrosity. This is a very scaled down version of the car, so things do change. Like just this little raise, just that raise right here where that little green highlight is. Look at it, comes down and then it raises up. And then look at on top of that, there's a little gray part that goes up to the shock mount, and that gray part transitions through back here. And like all this stuff, when you start blowing it up, that raise is pretty considerable. And what I wanted this to be was like a paintbrush. When you check it out, and I don't know if I can get it with this, but if you have a brush pen or a paintbrush, you start off and it's this big thing and it draws out, and especially if it's like a brush that's shaped like this on the end of a pen, you get a big dramatic start and then it fades out, right? Like that's your brush tip. And that's how it naturally kind of feels, it's like a piece of art. And so the Sandcar with the shapes here, that's the same deal. I wanted to be able to have it where it looked like a brush flow, where the mass, the volume here, it comes and it pulls up and then it doesn't just stop here. I didn't want to build a whole separate piece back here that just looks like a separate piece that you added to your car. So this pulls, and when I built it, I didn't have the shocks in here. I built this whole thing and built it, all the way tied together. So this draws into here. Same thing, this starts small and it gains, and then we're gonna have more tin work that comes into here that ties all this together and it terminates early. There's not just that side profile, but there's another hit of this whole thing coming out. This blade, this is a void through here, right? So this whole piece will be another removable aluminum blade here. That'll be like the aileron or the wing of an airplane. It'll have a teardrop shape to it. There's shape that's running out and then there's more void, and this is favoring right into the shocks. This is all transitioning into stuff. So I wanted to keep this flow where it wasn't just big, bulky shapes. The other part is like, I feel like this is the most common shape that you start to pull from a car, because you literally build this out, you build it down, and then whatever the aluminum tells you is what you do. All of this has convex shape to it, meaning that it's curved. All of this has gone through an English wheel. The bottom didn't, but all of this top portion, so it actually has a curve to it. So there's a lot more life put into the surface of this thing. This is where we're at with it right now. I wanted to just get it introduced, but the other portion of this that happened before this, it's still root passed in a lot of areas, is we replaced the chassis. So this had doors on it before. There was a massive chassis failure here. So, the client wanted us to reinforce this, and I pretty much just built it like it would be a Class 1 car. secondary A-pillars, deleted the doors, triangulated from the belt line down, secondary gussets on the B-pillars, triangulation on the back wall. Everything's 120 wall, there is no 095. You know, everything is rolled, triangulation into the top roof. So it was missing a ton of this stuff. Same with the intrusion tube. So now it's extremely safe and rigid. This has probably been one of the more exciting things I've been working on. I'm so grateful for that thing over there. But I haven't been able to create an entire body, and I really look forward to doing some more of these. We have 2 more cars coming in that are getting full bodies. And I just, the amount of expression you get out of these is wonderful. So right now, this is very rough phase, and you have to understand I'm gonna have to knock a lot of the tin on here and get it straightened back out, but I've built everything on the body, or on the car, and I haven't been taking the stuff out and hitting it. So I'll need to hammer and dolly a lot of this stuff to get it straightened back out. There's just, when you weld aluminum, that's what I said in one of the Fab Diaries, it's very devious, meaning it doesn't have as much prediction as you'd think, where it might go one way and go another way and shrink and stretch just from welding the seam. So I have to kind of hit out all the weld seam and bring it back to life and shrink and stretch how it needs to be, and then it'll get painted. But you know, I wanted to get you just entry level into this. I think we'll talk about the windshield. Let me grab the glass. We took a chance. Mike, I miss you, our glass guy from Simi. Not only did Mike come out and do us amazing services, but I also grew into having a relationship with Mike, and he was a great person to talk to. But Mike used to cut glass for us, and it is an art and a craft. Luke, you know, we got the wheel to cut this one, and I think for doing it for our first time, solid, but nothing that we can probably use. So now we have a mock-up piece of glass here, and I think we just can build to this thing. I don't know where we want to be, but somewhere around there. We can build to this, and then I'm gonna have, you know, I have a new glass guy, and I think he can probably cut this, but at least we're gonna give him a demo piece that he can have as like a mock-up. But this is, you know, framed out where this will not be a gasket style window, meaning like I've seen some glass pieces where they have a gasket, a big ass fat old rubber gasket like an F100 window or something, where there's a big bulbous shape here. This will have a shelf, like a nice return built into it, same that you would have as you know, a factory windshield. You'd have a frame in there, you'd leave some space. I think you leave 3/4 of an inch of depth, and you know, this thing just glues in like normal, and then everything is really flush. So this is going to be my template to build the entire front windshield frame out. You know, I just need to figure out where the transitions start here. This is also built like I'm looking right now, right? Like where we want to come off, where the corner is going to start. You know, all of this is going to happen, and that's why I haven't put any detail into the hood yet, is because we wanted to solidify this thing first. This is off of a 22R, like a 92, 93 Toyota pickup truck. The good part about the Toyota pickup trucks is they have this curve. There's a term for this. Who was that told us the term, the curves, remember? Was that Caleb? Do you remember that though? They had like a term for this curve versus that, like the X and Y. But it was some, dude, no, it was a sick one. Like a helical curve or this, like it was something funny. And they pulled it out of their ass. I'm like, damn, okay. These things don't have like a side curve. Not as gnarly as a lot of windscreens do. So this is gonna be our test hit, but as far as intent on the car, full body, badass shape into here. Frenched in lights in the area, I'll show you. Frenched in tail lights in an area. Rear view camera with 2 rear facing brake bars. Full dash. And then we're gonna bring this to Buck to paint. Full paint job on this thing, repowder, and then testing. The client wants us to get all the bugs out. He's like, every time I get a Tatum or one of these cars, they just have so many bugs. And he's like, I want you guys to get all the bugs out. So we'll take this to Glamis and just try to find bugs if we can, and see if there's anything up with it before it has to go up north to him. So this is kind of the Sandcar intro. I can tell you a couple things of where I'm gonna go next on it so we can count on that. I'm gonna put this glass away. Couple details to cover. So being at the will of the chassis that's back here again, this had this aluminum thing back here that was just like a shape that kind of like was like a diaper that went on this thing and was raised up. Part of the goal here is to include details of the chassis into the car. Part of that is where, you know, the tube work can grow out of the tin work. The shock mount can grow out of areas. So it's having things be cohesive instead of just covering everything up. And that's the same thing too, not closing this whole thing out, but letting these things terminate and have, you know, I guess just open areas of chassis. The car is running a red line LS with a blower, but there's areas of tin work that will need to be closed out. My thing right now is chunking everything out. So not focusing, some of this I needed just to figure out body lines, you know, and figure out like where this is pulling into here, you know, where this can come through, where this can come through, and just looking at it. And so I've finished a couple areas just for my own clarity to understand design and style, not necessarily to finish the part out. The portion up there where the returns are, that's gonna be for a rear facing camera, and then two small like 8-inch RTLs that'll live in there. And then what I'd like I have it in the drawing, let me see. This area where this transition is, I have a small light in here, and what I'd like to run is, I'm thinking of running, you know, planes a lot of times have their running lights, like their nighttime running lights, whatever those are called. Zadok, you can get that one. I want to have something very small but effective back here, and I think we figure out where in here, like I don't know what it looks like to French that shape in. But I think there would be a badass opportunity here where you can add like a rifle barrel through here and then have the light, you know, sitting 90 degrees down in here, but like removing some material on something that's got a multi-surface change, it gives a really sick detail. And it kind of ties into the tube work coming through here. So that's one area I'd like to address. But this, again, getting the chunks done. I hate seeing that back there. So this is probably the next thing I'm gonna finalize, is just closing this out and figuring out if we're gonna add a little bit of shape here. I think instead of it being a smooth draw, I'm just gonna upset this a little bit with like a little raise. And then, you know, have that profile and foundation available for the lights and the camera. Next step is going through here, getting the windshield frame done. This is all, again, to chunk the shapes out, and then I'm gonna go back, I'll weld everything, I'll finish everything, and then I'm gonna seam everything. So you can even see like the Sharpie pre-run in here is from me just kind of figuring out, telling myself, okay, this is not how this is gonna look. We are going to trim the fat off this thing. You know, what's that gonna look like? Just so I can get a bearing on it myself, because there's a lot of, you know, fat that needs to be trimmed out. Same with these areas where they terminate. This will all get boxed in, so it's not just gonna be an edge, but it'll have like, you know, surface and dimension here. Back there, this guy, this detail in here, the rear detail that's missing, that's some of this lower portion. You know, this all needs to draw back here. It's not gonna close out this whole side, but there's just gonna be some shape in here that ties all that lower portion into the back. So this whole thing will just be one big moving, fast looking thing. After that, we'll do the dash. It's not enough room in here to make sense to do a center console, so just something effective. It's a relatively simple Sandcar, you know, one Motec display, sequential gearbox, just fast and clean. We're gonna upholster the dash, so there'll be Alcantara on there. There's interior door cards that need to be done. Again, those are gonna be simple and clean. I think the wins to be had are just gonna be on the visual cues and the focal points. So that's where we're at with this thing. Same detail on the tail lamp is when this area gets filled in, I want to French in another running light here. I think that'll be its signature detail. We can still run the bar that was up here, but right here will be a running light. And like I said, I'm going to try to use an aviation light, so it's something extremely bright. Like when you look up and you see planes flying, they're very small when you look at them in scale. And I'm going to run something sunk in here, and it'll carry the same design language as that rifled tail lamp, where the headlamp or the running lamp will be in here, and it'll be very distinct signature for this car, because you'll see that. You know, you're not going to see something where there's these gnarly bright lights, you know, widespread behind the front wheels. It's just not typical. So it's a really exciting car. Juggling this thing around. I've been doing a lot of weekend work on this thing, a lot of nighttime hours to get it to where it needs to be. And we're going to have to keep doing that to get everything else full at the same time. So thank you guys for watching.